In 1948, a comedian named Jimmy Janowitz, he was known as Triple J because of the two J's and the fact that he was Jewish, got on stage in Baltimore, Maryland, his hometown, to perform comedy on a variety show. He'd been doing comedy a couple of years, and he was sort of tired of a lot of the act-outs that he'd been seeing in comedy, so he decided to take it up a level. And he was doing a bit on David and Goliath, and he talked about how it would be funny if Goliath hit David on the head with his giant penis. And he acted that out by hitting himself on the head with the microphone. He was booed off stage that night. Rumor is Jimmy went on to be a successful car salesman, but it's just one of those funny things about comedy. Sometimes you can be too early or too late. And it looks like Triple J might have just been a little too early.
I made a good living as a car man, but had I known what was to come, I might have used the mic as a dick for more shows.
In 1959, just a few years after Jimmy Janowitz's ill-fated comedy attempt in Baltimore, a young man working in his parents' restaurant started to feel the wheels of comedy turning. The restaurant was Jones' Rib Shack in Birmingham, Alabama. The young man was Tommy Jones.
Now look, you don't get Kevin Hart hit himself on the head with a microphone like a Shaq's dick without Tommy Jones. All right? It all started in that little Alabama restaurant.
Now growing up, Tommy was the funny one in his family, but he still had to work. So from his teens to his early 20s, he actually worked as a bathroom attendant in his family's restaurant. Now working hours a day, every day in a bathroom, he was exposed to a lot of penises. And I think that experience stuck with him as his comedy grew.
After saving his money and the birth of his parents' 27th child, which finally gave him enough replacements to work at the restaurant, Tommy moved to New York City to pursue his passion for comedy.
Now, Jones wanted to be a comedian, but he told his family he was going north to be a bathroom attendant at a fancy restaurant. So he would send letters home for years, talking about this fake life in New York City.
By 1965, Tommy Jones was stalling in his comedy dream. Fewer Northerners were looking for quaint tales of Southern life as the country was ripping apart in racial tension.
Now, in the turmoil of the 1960s, there wasn't really a good place for a comic like Tommy Jones. You know, he had that kind of slow Southern cadence. His stories weren't political. They almost came off to some people a little Uncle Tom-ish. But then he met Wilt Chamberlain.
By 1965, Wilt Chamberlain had already established himself as an NBA legend, having scored 100 points in a single game a few years earlier. He stood over 7 feet tall and was also crafting a legend off the court as well.
Now Will had basketball powers. It was amazing. But everybody also knew he was slinging this thing around town, you know? We didn't need no TMZ to tell us that.
Now, when Tommy and Wilt met in 1965, it was this incredible chance occurrence. Wilt was in town for like 3 days. Tommy was about to hit the road the next week. But they meet in Harlem because Tommy's manager, Saul Seidenbaum, was also Wilt's business manager. So this chance occurrence lands up changing the course of comedy history forever.
September 3rd, 1965. What we saw tonight on stage in the West Village may be replicated 1 time or 1,000,000 times. But the experience of seeing this act live for the first time, was like a tsunami for everyone in attendance. New York Times.
So you've got this funny kid struggling for an edge in New York City. He's got a background of looking at dicks from his early work as a bathroom attendant. He has just met Wilt Chamberlain. These things come together perfectly.
He used to be telling that story about when he met Wilt Chamberlain and that Southern cadence he had. Sorry. And then he took the mic and he bopped himself on the head.
I mean, it can't be overstated. This was a monumental event in comedy. You know, it may seem like a simple thing now, but, you know, just like Jimmy Janowitz was too early, this was the right time, the right moment, and the right comedian.
The crowd sat silently for what felt like an eternity, and then tremendous laughter and applause. He began that set, Tommy Jones from Alabama. After that set, he was a New York icon. But still black, so not that great. New York Post.
Now, just as Tsunami Jones was becoming a star, two tragedies hit him. One was the death of Martin Luther King Jr. The other, which arguably had as big a role in the African American community, was other black comedians began to use the Dick Mike gimmick.
As the nation mourned over the death of King, black comics responded by latching on to whatever positives they could. And that meant many black comedians taking the Dick Mike, pioneered so bravely by Tommy Tsunami Jones, and using it for themselves.
Outside of Martin Luther King Jr.'s immediate family, I don't think anybody was hit harder in 1968 than Tommy Jones. Because he lost, obviously, a civil rights leader and inspiration, and I don't mean to demean or diminish that, but he was also losing hold of his signature comedic invention. And that's when the drinking began.
I once got in a fight and stabbed a nigga in the chest because he used a microphone as a police baton just because it was similar to what Tommy was doing. So I can only imagine the pain Tommy felt when his act being used all around town. That ain't right.
The great tragedy of Tommy Tsunami Jones is that the wave of influence he started, he benefited from the least.
On May 19th, 1970, Tommy Jones took to the stage in Harlem. The crowd was packed. Perhaps it was the alcohol, perhaps it was the anger at having the Dick Mike stolen by dozens, if not hundreds, of comics already. But he described meeting Wilt Chamberlain as his traditional closing bit, and struck his head so hard that he passed out. It was a sleep he would never awaken from.
A lot of comedians give their life to comedy. But how many literally give their life on that stage? Only one.
See, I'm a student of the history of comedy. And every time I use the mic to pretend like I'm fucking, I give thanks to Tsunami Jones. Every time I hump a stool on stage, that's my little remix, my tribute to Tsunami Jones.
Tommy Tsunami Jones died on May 23rd, 1970. He was just 32 years old.